All right, thanks everyone for taking some time today to talk with us about supplements. Today we have Michele Brown. She's the Nutritional Health Coach from the Topeka Natural Grocers with us today. So thanks for stopping by, Michele.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today. Like Britton said, I'm Michele from Natural Grocers. I'm the Nutritional Health Coach here at the store in Topeka. And so I teach the classes. We do also offer free one-on-one health coaching sessions to our customers. And so today what we're going to be talking about is nutrients to support your health. And so let me share my screen here. Tell me if I've, oh, let me get back to the start there. I just got to figure out my technology. There we go. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we're going to be talking about supplements today and the 5 foundational supplements to support your health. Before we get started, I always like to remind you our class is not intended to diagnose, treat, or mitigate any disease, and that dietary supplements and foods can interact with prescription medication. So if you are taking a prescription, you basically just want to become informed about those interactions, and the best thing to do is speak with your doctor or pharmacist there if you have concerns, okay? All right, so let's talk about these nutrients that I'm so excited when Brent asked me to present this topic, because I think a lot of times when we're thinking about our health, we're thinking about maybe we need to cut back on the carbs, or maybe we were talking about keto before we got started. And, so that's really popular right now. People are trying to eat a ketogenic diet, which means eating a high fat diet, low carbohydrate. So, people thinking about, cutting their carbs, or maybe eating more fat, or maybe trying to get more protein, right? Those macronutrients. But we also need to think about our micronutrients, right? These vitamins and minerals that are essential for life. And they're essential for every biological process in the body. And in fact, there are over 40 essential nutrients which we need to get from our diet, or we are in big trouble, right? And so the 40 essential nutrients we're talking about are vitamins, like your fat-soluble vitamins, which could be vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and then your water-soluble vitamins, like the B vitamins, and of course your minerals, calcium, magnesium, copper, iodine. There's a lot of minerals there, right? And then we have essential fatty acids as well. So those are your omega-3 and your omega-6 fats that we also need to get from the diet, as well as some essential amino acids. So there are 9 essential amino acids. And again, essential just means we have to get them from the diet. We can't synthesize them in the body like we can certain other nutrients or amino acids. Now, these are essential for life, and a single nutrient may be involved in as many as hundreds of different biochemical reactions in our body. But when our body lacks these nutrients, we can get into a state of disease. But one thing I think it's really important to know about these nutrients is, we're talking about a deficiency in those nutrients. So we want to make sure we're getting enough of these nutrients, but sometimes the amount we need to prevent a deficiency doesn't necessarily equal the amount we need to have optimal health, okay? And I want to show you what I mean by this by talking about something called the nutrient triage theory. Okay, and we're going to use vitamin D as an example here. So when you are low in a single nutrient, like our vitamin D, you can see there our little gauge is on empty. We only have a little bit of vitamin D, so the body has to decide how it's going to allocate that vitamin D to certain functions that are really necessary for survival. So again, in our example of vitamin D, the body says, okay, I've only got a little bit of vitamin D, so I'm going to have to use it to regulate calcium, because regulating calcium is actually very critical to maintain our blood pH, which is necessary for survival. Okay, if our blood pH is it has to stay within a certain range, and if it gets outside of that range, you die, right? Like, it's that serious. So we really want to make sure that we're regulating calcium, and that is the first job that vitamin D is going to do when we only have a little bit, which means we can't do these other important things like maintaining healthy cellular division, maintaining healthy brain function, or supporting the immune system. So what we really want to think about is getting not only enough of these nutrients to get to, to cover our bases, but we really want to think about enough to get to optimal health, okay? So when we have optimal amounts of a nutrient, the body can go from surviving to thriving. And another example of this would be vitamin C. And I think this is a good example because you may know what happens when a person doesn't have enough vitamin C, right? They get this really yucky disease called scurvy. And people don't really get this anymore, but back in, I don't know, like the 1800s, sailors would go out on these ships for months at a time, and, they just eat, like, I don't know, hardtack or whatever they took with them. They didn't have any vitamin C in their diet, and basically they would end up, after, a month or so, developing this really yucky disease called scurvy. And it took a while for them to figure out that vitamin C was, a deficiency in vitamin C was causing this disease. So today, if you look at the recommended daily allowance for vitamin C, it's somewhere around, I believe, like 60 milligrams a day, okay? But that 60 milligrams, that's only talking about the amount you need to keep from developing a deficiency disease. And in this case, of vitamin C, that would be scurvy, right? So again, that amount, that recommended daily allowance isn't the amount that we need for optimal health. It's just the amount we need to prevent a deficiency disease. So again, let's go back to vitamin D here for a minute, because if we're deficient in vitamin D, we can develop a disease called rickets, which affects the bones. But just that minimum amount of vitamin D that we need to keep from developing rickets isn't really that optimal amount we need to do all of these other jobs. So again, regulating calcium, healthy cellular division, supporting the brain, supporting the immune system. So really important that we think about getting optimum amounts of these nutrients so that they can really do all of these functions that they're meant to do in the body. Now, this is really important to think about because nutrient deficiencies are not that uncommon. Even here in the United States, where we have a lot of food, right? We have plenty of things to eat, and our grocery stores are full. We're not like our ancestors who maybe were out there, hunter-gatherer diet, where they had to really search for food and work hard to get something in their stomach. We have an abundance of food today, right? So why are we so deficient? Well, first of all, let's talk about these deficiencies. Data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, or the NHANES, revealed that 31% of the US population was at risk for at least one vitamin deficiency. And what they found was that supplement non-users had the highest risk of deficiency. So said it an easier way maybe is people who weren't using supplements were more common to have a deficiency. Their data from NHANES revealed micronutrient inadequacies that are common in the US, including 100% of the people in the survey were deficient in potassium. Like, everybody was deficient. And that's probably because we get a lot of our potassium from our veggies and our leafy greens, those foods that most of us aren't eating enough of, right? Same thing with vitamin E, 88% were deficient, 66.9% deficient in vitamin K, at least over half were deficient in magnesium. I've seen that one estimated as high as 80% in some studies, 43% deficient in vitamin A, and you can see here some of these other nutrients that were really common to be deficient in. Now, we talked about some of those deficiency diseases like scurvy and rickets, but a lot of times when we're deficient in these nutrients, we may not have these, overt diseases. We may just notice things like general fatigue or reduced ability to fight infections or impaired cognitive function. We can also see that there are long-term effects from being deficient in these nutrients over time. So we really want to make sure we're getting our nutrients in, right? Okay, so like I said, here we are in the US, we have an abundance of food. So why are we so deficient? Well, let's look at some of the reasons behind this, okay? So one reason is the way that we process our food and the way that it's grown. numerous studies have found that the vitamin and mineral content of foods has been declining since the early 1900s. And one reason is that our practices of industrial agriculture, which focus on crop yield over nutrition, is contributing to this problem in a number of ways. For one thing, we look at our soil health. We're doing things like monocropping, using synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, and tilling. And all of these things have been shown to reduce the nutrient profile of the soil. We also have a lot of foods that are either genetically modified or they are genetically, what's the word I'm looking for there? Selected for higher yields over nutrient density. So, for example, wheat has been shown, as we've hybridized and selected for varieties that produce higher yields, we haven't really paid attention to what is that doing to the nutrition of the plant. And unfortunately, it's often, our higher yields are coming at the cost of our nutrient density of these plants. Global warming, we're increasing our CO2 levels, and that's promoting increased carbohydrate levels in plants, interestingly enough, and that can dilute the plant nutrient density. So that's kind of a whole topic of its own right there. But we know, again, a lot of us are becoming more aware that eating a really high carbohydrate diet can have some negative impacts on our health. And as the carbohydrate level is going up, the nutrient density of the plant is going down. Okay, so a lot of our nutrient deficiencies are coming from just the way that we're growing our food. Organic agriculture is a food production system that focuses on building healthy soil, and we often say that food is only as healthy as its soil. So here you see a chart that is showing how organically grown food has an average of 5.7% higher content of vitamins and minerals than the conventionally grown counterparts. And this was a 2011 study. And again, it just compared the content of plant foods that were produced by organic versus conventional agricultural methods. And again, it just showed that on average, the vitamin and mineral content of these plants was higher in the organically grown produce. So that's something to definitely think about there. And then of course, food processing, I don't think this is going to come as a big surprise, but a 2017 study looked to examine the relationship between our intake of ultra-processed foods and our critical nutrients. And when we're talking about an ultra-processed foods, these are defined as foods made from several ingredients that also go through a series of processes before being packaged and sold. And ultra-processed foods include soft drinks, sweet or savory packaged snacks, confections and industrialized desserts, and mass-produced packaged breads and poultry and fish nuggets and other reconstituted meat products. It also includes instant noodles and soups and other ready-to-consume foods made from several ingredients. So that's what we're talking about, these ultra-processed foods. And of course, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? If these foods are really processed, that's going to deplete the nutrients in that food. And the concerning thing here is that these foods make up over half of the US diet here in the United States. Most people are relying on these types of packaged convenience foods to make up the bulk of their diet. And studies again have shown that these foods are significantly lower in things like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D and E, as well as zinc, potassium, phosphorus, magnesium, calcium, right? We can see here from, again, this graph from the study that as the percentage of food intake from ultra-processed food goes up, the nutritional content of the diet overall will go down. So really something to think about, considering that a lot of people are relying on these types of foods in the diet. We also know that lifestyle can really affect our nutrient profile as well. A lot of people are dealing with a lot of stress today, things like alcohol, smoking, environmental toxins, medications, the fact that we're not getting outside as much, sitting excessively, not getting enough physical activity. And these can actually play a role in our nutrient needs. We know that when we're stressed, we have a higher need for nutrients like vitamin C and magnesium. And so we're going to be depleting those nutrients more quickly. And unfortunately, if we're already more deficient in those nutrients, that's going to have a negative impact on our overall health, right? So what can we do about this? How can we get our nutrient status back up to an optimal intake so that we feel our best? We can ditch some of those fatigue and some of those symptoms that we're all trying to avoid. Well, we can talk about supplements, and I want to just state first of all that the foundation of good health is built on good nutrition and a healthy lifestyle. I like to say you can't out supplement a good diet or a bad diet. So, a lot of people try to rely on, their multivitamin or whatever to get all their nutrients, but really you need to make sure that you've got a good nutrient dense diet as the foundation for your health. And then we can kind of come in and fill in the gaps with our nutrient support, right? Our supplements. So we're going to talk about 5 nutrient categories today. And these are what we call the foundational 5 here at Natural Grocers. And these are going to help to provide your body with some of the most important nutrients that are necessary to take your health to the next level. So today we're going to look at multivitamin, we're going to look at magnesium, lutein, EPA and DHA, and then we're going to talk about a really special category called super nutrients, okay? So let's start with our multivitamin. We really recommend using a multivitamin here at Natural Grocers because it's going to kind of cover your bases and make sure that it's kind of providing that nutritional insurance to help fill in your vitamin and mineral gaps, which may not be obtained in your diet, right? We looked at how our soils are more depleted. Most of us are not eating an optimal diet. Of course, we want to do our best we can, but sometimes we need a little nutritional insurance, and that's really what your multivitamin is for. It's going to cover most of your essential vitamins and minerals, like the ones you see here on the screen. And there's been a lot of studies on multivitamins to show that they can support energy, mood, cognition, cardiovascular health, as well as helping with balancing healthy blood sugar levels. So I want to look at one of these studies. This was a 2019 review that assessed the contribution of multivitamins for nutritional inadequacies in the middle-aged adults for several vitamins and minerals. And so what you're looking at here is the percent of people who were below that kind of recommended daily intake there. And the blue bars are the people who didn't use multivitamins, right? Our red bar is the people who took a multivitamin anywhere from 1 to 15 days a month, okay? So maybe every other day, every couple of days, they would remember to take their multivitamin. Anybody guilty of forgetting to take their multivitamin every day? I know it can be easy to do. And then we're looking at the green bars, and these are people who were a little better, they were a little more on top of it, right? They used their multivitamin at least 16 days a month or more. So you can see there that, again, nutrients like choline, that one's kind of interesting. I think they're pretty much tied there. I don't know why everyone's deficient in choline. They must not be eating their eggs for breakfast. But that one's a little bit tough to come by. But going kind of on the other side, like our vitamin D and our vitamin K, our blue bars, which are our non-multivitamin users, almost 100% were deficient in vitamin D and about over 50% in vitamin K. Whereas look at our green bars, which are people who were remembering to take that multivitamin, right? A lot less of those people were deficient in these important nutrients. Compared with nutrient intake from food alone, our regular multivitamin use significantly increased the intake for 15 out of our 18 nutrients that they were studying. So there you go. You can see how that helped kind of cover their nutritional bases, right? A 2019 study looked to measure the effects of a multi on several measures of cognition in healthy adults over an 8-week period. And at the end of the study, the researchers determined that the participants taking the multi improved their micronutrient profile. They also saw increased cognitive scores across several tests, which included verbal and visual memory, processing speed, motor planning, learning, and working memory. So that's kind of an exciting study there to see how it impacted their cognition. One thing that I always am interested in there. Okay, let's look at our next category in our foundational 5, and that's EPA and DHA, which you might know better as just our omega-3 fatty acids, right? Our omega-3s. These are really important for helping to support a healthy cell membrane. And I know you may be thinking, okay, well, what's the big deal there? Like, nobody wakes up in the morning and thinks, I really need to support my cell membranes today, right? But if you knew how important those cell membranes were, you would definitely be saying that, because EPA and DHA, which again are our 2 main omega-3 fats, are well known to help modulate inflammation and therefore support full body wellness across our lifespan. There are so many studies out there on the benefits of EPA and DHA and how they impact healthy weight maintenance, our cardiovascular health, learning and memory, mood, joint health. They support the health of the gut, the immune system, as well as hair, skin, and nails. The Dietary Guideline Advisory Committee recommends 8 ounces of seafood per week in order to provide an average consumption of 250 milligrams per day of EPA and DHA. And that's because, of course, we know seafood is our best source of these omega-3 fats, right? Especially those cold water fatty fish. So anybody eating their salmon at least 2 or 3 times a week, or their sardines or mackerel, you are like going to get bonus points from me if you're eating your sardines, because most people I talk to are like, not going to do it. They're too fishy. And I agree, they can be, but I do like salmon. I can do that one. But it can be hard to get this much, 8 ounces. That's a pretty decent amount of seafood. You'd have to be eating, at least 3 or 4 servings a week. And even then, you'd only be getting about 250 milligrams of those omega-3 fatty acids that we're looking for, right? When we look at the research, the studies suggest that 1,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA from supplements may be the amount we need to experience those optimal benefits like we were talking about, right? So that's quite a bit of EPA, DHA, quite a bit of fish, right? Especially for us here in Kansas, right? We're not living next to the sea. A 2014 review from that NHANES data revealed a significant number of American adults are not meeting their recommendations for omega-3 acid intake. So that's something to consider. This is one of our top supplements that are so beneficial to everyone that I think it's one to make sure you're including, especially if you're not eating fish. Oops. There we go. Sorry about that, Janet. I'm sorry. I don't know if you were waiting to get in, but we're glad you're here. EPA and DHA, let's talk about those and how they relate back to our omega-6 fatty acids. So our omega-6s, this is something really important to know about omega-3s, okay? Our omega-6 fats and our omega-3 fats, they work in balance with each other. So our omega-6 fats, which we tend to get from things like soy, corn, canola, safflower, sunflower oil, they are the types of fats that promote inflammation in the body. And they're pretty common in our processed foods, right? We know if you pick up some chips or crackers or cookies, you'll often see they're made with things like soy or canola or sunflower oil. And again, we need these in balance, and optimally, we want that balance somewhere to be around 1 to 1, okay? So for every gram of omega-3 we're going to be eating 1 gram of canola, or I'm sorry, omega-6 fats, right? Unfortunately, estimates are that we're eating somewhere around 20 to 1, that ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, which means that because we're eating so much more omega-6 in the diet, that's promoting inflammation, right? So something to think about. You not only want to think about the amount of omega-3 that you're getting, but you also want to be considering, are you balancing your omega-6 and omega-3s, okay, so that they're about equal. Again, EPA and DHA are found in cold water fish like salmon, sardines, herring, and they can also be found in fish and cod liver oils. And there are some algae-derived alternatives as well for people who are vegan or vegetarian and want to avoid fish products. All right, so our third nutrient that we were going to discuss today is magnesium, and this one is so important, right? We saw how over 50% of Americans are not meeting the recommended intake for magnesium according to that NHANES study. And again, I've seen estimates up to 80% of Americans are deficient. And that's probably, again, because we get our magnesium mainly from our leafy greens and our veggies, that category of food that we sometimes don't get enough of, right? It's so important because magnesium is estimated to be a cofactor for over 600 different enzymatic processes in the body. It's responsible for many biochemical reactions, including healthy cell division, genetic expression, and energy production, okay? So we really want to make sure that this is a nutrient we are getting enough of. Magnesium is bound to the plant pigment chlorophyll, and so it can be found in high concentrations in our dark leafy green veggies, and that's going to be your best source. So of course, getting more of those in the diet is important, but a lot of people do find that supplementing with magnesium can be really helpful as well. Magnesium is required to activate 3 major enzymes that are responsible for vitamin D activation and function in the cell. And one thing I want to point out with that is our nutrients work together. We call this nutrient synergy. Okay, so when we have vitamin D, we also need magnesium and things like vitamin K to help our body utilize that vitamin D in the appropriate way. And that's one reason why we really want to get our nutrients first from food, because our food is going to have a wonderful array of these different nutrients that's really helpful. And then again, we can come in and supplement with what we're lacking from our diet. A 2013 study looked to see if magnesium intake was related to vitamin D levels, and it found that magnesium intake from either diet or supplement was independently and significantly associated with reduced vitamin D deficiency and insufficiency. So that's kind of a mouthful, right? But showing that our magnesium intake was really important piece of utilizing our vitamin D. So little nutrition joke here, but all I can say is OMG. Haha. Magnesium is well known as a relaxation mineral. However, research has shown that magnesium provides a wide range of health benefits. Some we've already discussed, like heart health. It helps with sleep, it helps with bones, it helps with mood, blood sugar balance. Again, there's so many important things that magnesium does that it's really important to make sure you're not deficient. Another thing to consider with magnesium is the type that you're taking. There are different forms of magnesium, like magnesium glycinate. I like to recommend for people who need a little support with sleep. Magnesium citrate. So there's different varieties of magnesium or forms. And if you're interested in knowing more about that, or you're wanting to know how much to take, that's something that I can get you some information on, or we can set up a health coaching session and help you figure that out. Okay, let's truck on here to our next nutrient. We're going to talk about lutein. Lutein, maybe not as well known as some of our more popular nutrients like vitamin D or magnesium, but lutein is a really important nutrient found in our food. It's actually a yellow carotenoid, and it's found in orange and yellow fruits and vegetables. It's what gives egg yolks that bright orange color. It's also in dark leafy greens such as chard and spinach. Now those are green because they have a lot of chlorophyll, so they're kind of hiding the lutein, right, so that they're not orange or yellow, but there is lutein in there. In fact, our lutein supplements are commonly derived from the marigold flower, so a little fun fact there. And in the body, lutein is found in the highest concentration in the eyes, the brain, and the skin, and it's really supportive of these 3 areas of the body. Okay, so we can actually measure the amount of lutein in the eye by this test that is called the macular pigment optical density test, or we just call it MPOD because that's easier to say. IMPOD is measured by shining a light in your eye to measure the thickness of the macula in the back of the eye. And so that thickness of the macula is going to correspond to the amount of lutein that's stored in the eye. Research shows lutein acts to filter blue light in the eye and helps to maintain the health of our eyes as we age. So I think this is really important for us in this day and age where a lot of us are using computers and electronic devices which emit that blue light, which again can be damaging to the eye and to the skin. So again, lutein can be really protective there. Interestingly, when we measure IMPOD in the eye, that thickness of the macula, that also corresponds to the amount of lutein that's in the brain. And so different studies have shown how having a higher IMPOD score has helped to support learning, memory, and cognition. Lutein can also benefit the skin. It helps to maintain the health of the skin by absorbing that blue light and therefore modulating inflammation. And so thereby it helps to maintain skin hydration and elasticity and support healthy aging of the skin. It also helps to support full body wellness by modulating inflammation and acting as a free radical scavenger. So our benefits to lutein go beyond our eyes, our brain, and our skin, and they can even support our health, or our heart, our bone, and our immune health. So maybe lutein, it might be a little bit of a nutrient that's new to you, but that's one to start considering, especially if you're thinking about brain, skin, or eye health today. Okay, so let's talk about our last category here, and this one's a little different. We're going to talk about our super nutrients. And super nutrients are going to go beyond vitamins and minerals to help you customize your health goals, okay? So this is where you kind of get to fill in the gap with whatever supports your specific health goals. So that might be something like CoQ10 if you're thinking about heart support, or turmeric if that healthy inflammatory response is something you're looking for. Things like berberine, our alpha lipoic acid that we were talking about earlier, those can help support healthy blood sugar levels. Milk thistle, probiotics, is going to help support the liver and the gut. So this is where you kind of take your specific health goal and your health concerns, and you can put in there what you need, okay? There's really no one size fits all approach to health. That's what our health coaches are here for. We're here to educate and train you to help figure out which super nutrient's best for you. So you can, again, you can set up a free health coaching session. Those are always free to our customers that can help you figure out your supplement routine that works best for you. Or you can go online on naturalgrocers.com. We have this fun little quiz you can take, and it will help you figure out which super nutrient would be best supportive of your overall health goals and needs. So you can see the address there. It's naturalgrocers.com/super-nutrients. So that's kind of fun to try out and see what comes up for you. We know nutrients are the very foundation of our lives, and our bodies really depend on these vitamins and minerals and nutrients to function optimally. So you want to think about your foundational 5 in order to fill in those nutrient gaps. And this is really a great way to support people from all ages and address all the changing needs of our generation and support fundamental health. Even when we try to eat healthy, most of us are going to struggle to get in those optimal amounts of nutrients that we try to get from food alone. So these foundational 5 supplements can really help, again, to sort of fill in the gaps and take you from surviving to thriving, which is what we all really want. So hopefully all of those nutrients will be a good part of your foundational 5. And if you guys have any questions about any of those nutrients, we can definitely take questions. I don't know. Oh, let's see if somebody's. Oh, Christine, thank you for sharing. Sardines for lunch today. You get the bonus points for today. That is awesome. I know sardines are a little more fishy than some of the other, fish. Like I can do salmon and tuna, but I have to really be in the mood for sardines. I'm not gonna lie. They're not always my favorite either. But they're really great for those omega-3s. Awesome. Does anybody have any questions about what you talked about or any other comments? And you can just type it into the chat, or I'm sure it's fine for if they just unmute themselves and just ask away. Otherwise, I'll just again let you know that we do offer free health coaching sessions here at Natural Grocers. You can just call the store at 785-228-9100 and set that up. One of the things we do is a supplement review. So sometimes people bring me the list of supplements they're taking, and we go over that and make sure that they're getting the right supplements in the right amounts and all of that for what they need. It looks like Kent asked, is it possible to get too much of any vitamins? Yes, definitely, we can take too much. In general, that's why, for one thing, you want to follow the guidelines on your supplement bottle, and just make sure that you are following, the recommended amount on there. And generally, you'll be okay with that. And generally, you would have to take most of these nutrients for, a really high amount for a long time to get to the point where you're experiencing toxicity. And for most part, that really applies to a lot of our fat-soluble vitamins, because those fat-soluble vitamins we can actually store in our fat, right? And so we can build up a toxicity to those. But the only one that really comes to mind would be like vitamin D, which sometimes people take higher amounts of vitamin D. You can get your vitamin D levels measured pretty easily, though. That's something your doctor can do for you when you go in for like your annual blood work. So I like to recommend that when people are, thinking of taking vitamin D. I think it's something everybody should just have their vitamin D levels checked and see where they're at, and that will also give you a good idea of how much to supplement with. Okay, I've got a couple other questions. Are there any supplements we shouldn't take together, like spacing out timing and meds? Okay, great question. That can apply to a few different things, like if you do take iron, for instance, you don't want to take it with calcium because they can interfere with absorption of each other. But if you're taking iron, it's a good idea to take it with vitamin C, because vitamin C actually helps your body absorb that iron. So there are a few little, few little caveats there, but for the most part, it's not a huge big deal, right? Like we take our multivitamins, and it has most of these nutrients in there together. And so, again, that can be, specific situations that might apply, but for the most part, I think you can usually take most of them together and there's not a real concern there. Hopefully that answered that question for you. Yes, you're welcome. How can we find out which vitamins and nutrients are deficient in our diet? Okay, great question. There's a couple of things I would recommend. So you could use a diet tracking app, like right now we're kind of wrapping up our keto reset we do every year here at Natural Grocers. And we use a diet tracking app called Chronometer, or I know some people like, MyFitnessPal probably does this as well. And you can punch in, what you've eaten for the day, and it will tell you, like how many fat grams and calories and all of that. But it can also tell you your micronutrients as well. So that might be something interesting to try, just even for a few days or like a week, just to kind of get, a little snapshot of your diet. And maybe you'll notice like, oh, I'm only getting about 50% of my, vitamin A on most days, or something like that. So maybe trying something like that just to give you an idea. You can do some blood tests, like I mentioned, vitamin D, that you can do that will tell you your nutrient profile. Some are a little trickier, like vitamin D is pretty easy to do. I know people can get like their B12 tested. If you're looking at some of those micronutrients like zinc or some of those trace minerals, that can be a little bit trickier. But there are some tests out there. They also can get a little expensive. So that might be why I would maybe just recommend starting with tracking it in like a diet tracking app. I'm not a big fan of like tracking your diet and every calorie you eat all the time. I just think that gets a little tedious, and don't want to get too caught up in those numbers. But sometimes just to kind of give yourself, again, that snapshot to see where your diet is at, I think they can be helpful for that. So just try tracking it for a week or so and see, see what comes out for you. It's kind of an interesting thing to do. Those tests, again, some of those basic tests like vitamin D can be really important. I think B12 can be helpful as well. But some of those other nutrients gets a little more tricky to test. I don't know if you have any, Brent, I know this is kind of something you know about too. So I don't know if you know any more about like testing, but I know there are some really fancy tests out there on, tracking your nutrient profile, but they can get kind of
the
pricey.
Testing can definitely become a little bit of a rabbit hole, and the kind of return you get on that probably isn't worth it.
Yeah.
Just because, like you said, some of the tests, we don't even know how accurate they necessarily are when you're measuring like a blood value versus what might be in tissues or being utilized by organs. You just don't know. But something like vitamin D can be a really good one because the serum value is a pretty good representation of what's going on with B12 is another good one. But other than that, I'd probably go with like chronometer. Anytime I do health coaching here, that's what we use.
Okay.
Where people are at. And then, other than that, kind of look for overall general patterns in the diet rather than focusing like, oh, I think I might be low in zinc, so I'm going to take a lot of zinc to try to make up for feeling like fatigue or something. It's like, that's like I said, kind of a dangerous route to go to. We're looking for general patterns to make sure you're getting support. And then also remember, because we were talking about getting too many vitamins, that all of these do work together. So if you take a whole lot of one thing, you're going to throw your system out of balance. Like you can, for instance, if you already have sufficient vitamin D and you want to take a lot more, you can actually get too much calcium absorption and start getting accumulation in tissues. So you want to make sure you're kind of staying in the normal healthy range, especially if you don't have an established deficiency.
Yes, true. Yes, I agree with that. That's kind of my take on it as well. And I did type the name of the diet app that I use is Chronometer. But again, I know some of my customers that we've gone through the keto reset, they use like MyFitnessPal. I know there's one called Carb Manager, I think, that some people are using for keto. I don't know if it does nutrient, like micronutrient tracking, but there's some great ones out there. So feel free to try one and find one that you like, but that is one that we like. Christine is saying she uses My Net Diary. So I'm not familiar with that one, but there's a lot of good ones out there these days.
And keep in mind too that a lot of them are actually free. So if you stumble on one that's going to like charge you a monthly amount, you don't have to do that. That's really like other features they have.
Right. I know Chronometer is free. I think you can pay to get more features, but a lot of times just the basic features are going to be plenty for what most of us are looking for.
Yep.
Awesome. Great questions.
All right. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, that was a really awesome presentation, Michelle. Thank you for coming out and doing that. And for anyone who's interested, we've recorded it, so we'll be posting it live later, the whole recording, so you can watch it back in your own convenience too.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. I enjoyed it. And like I said, you can reach out to me at the store if you have any other questions or you want to set up a free health coaching session. But otherwise, I will hopefully see you again soon.
All right. Thanks a lot. Everyone have a good day.